Good evening, Max. I'm sitting here in a nice warm room contemplating a very cool night when I'm done work. Going home, so a very cool night. Yeah, it's kind of nippy and windy out. Well, it might be cool in the colloquial sense too, but it's also cold. Is your mic muted, by the way? Okay, they hear me. Usually it's the other way around.
Oh, I just love it when OBS, it just whenever it just decides to stop working. I use the same mic input all the damn time, and yet sometimes when I log in, it just doesn't work. I don't know why. Hello, everybody.
Folks in the chat room, can you hear Max? Ah, there you go.
Yeah, they can hear
There you
me.
are.
I
Yep.
can see the bars coming up. I'm sorry about that, guys. Um, I really got to pay attention to that. Hello, welcome to episode 46 of the Differently Wired show. You missed my great joke at the beginning. I feel terribly about that, but it's okay. I'm here with all you lovely people, and you are more than enough to get me out of the holiday funk, which is what we're going to be talking about today. How's that for a segue? My name is Max Derrat, as I'm sure you're all aware, and joining me as always, he is John Tucker, and John would love to talk about how cool he is, just very briefly.
How cold I am. Cool, hardly at all.
Mm.
Cold sometimes.
He's so ice cold. He's like Mr. Freeze from Batman and Robin. He just makes all the ice puns, you know. Let's kick some ice. Um, that movie's so entertaining in all the wrong ways. But anyways, episode 46. We'll get into all the the usual stuff. Main topic, mailbag, yada yada yada. Just got to do the usual stuff. Facebook page. Yeah, we have one. There's a link to it in the description box below. I know there's some people here that have Facebook and haven't liked the page. Come on. Just what don't even think about not doing it. Just do it. Don't even think about it. It's like an impulse buy at the register. You know you want that 12 pack of wine gums. Just get it. Well, in this case, it's a Facebook page. Just do it. Also, Discord server. Hey, John, guess what?
How many are you?
We hit 900.
Ah, there you go. And I see you have.
I wanted to make a little celebration out of it. Now I got to stop the song before we get copyrighted. Yeah, we hit 900 subscribers today. Yeah, thanks so much to who is it, the guy that was our 900 member? I want to give him a special shout out. What is his name? A-Star. A-Star was our 900th member. Everybody that was in the Discord server gave him a very, very warm welcome. Thank you very much for doing that. And also a couple of YouTube personalities happened to join today just to help me push it over the 900 mark. Last Known Meal. You guys should go subscribe to him. He's does great Cyberpunk 2077 coverage, as well as Nuka Ellie, which is one of my favorite YouTubers. Go check her out. But yeah, overall, you guys know what the Discord server is for the most part. It's a place where you can come and discuss my videos, we share common interests, but it's also primarily a mental health server for people struggling with mental health or autism related issues. If you're looking for support, if you're looking for a calm, kind community to join, there is a link to it in the description box below. We're continuously growing in both membership as well as support team. So if you want to join that, if that sounds like something that's right up your alley, I highly recommend you do so, especially if you're considering it's the holidays and you might be going through some stuff right now and want some support. You'll find it there, I promise. Also, subscribe to our account if you like the stuff that I do on this channel or the stuff that John and I do with Differently Wired. I highly recommend you at least check out my Subscribe Star. It's sort of like Patreon, if you're familiar with what Patreon is. It's just, it doesn't have all the unethical business practices behind the scenes. So if you like the stuff that we're doing and you want to support it financially, just go and check out the Subscribe Star page that I have set up. There's a link to it in the description box below. And depending on how much you donate, you'll get the requisite rewards. Even if you donate the minimum amount, which is $1, there is a reward there for you. You get the audio version of this podcast. And then there's a whole bunch of other goodies that come along as you go up the tiers. And then finally, there is an after show. this oh yeah, this actually reminds me, we should point this out, guys. Today is the last episode of the Differently Wired show for 2019. We will not be here next Wednesday because I John, I keep forgetting about this. There's this like yearly holiday celebrated globally. I think it's called Christmas. It has something to do with this guy that lived 2,000
Yeah,
years ago. Apparently, he turned water
yeah,
into
I've
wine.
heard of that.
Yeah, which could be kind of annoying. You could probably, well, or fun depending on if you have it. You probably see people showering and then just turns the water into wine.
Yeah, I go to restaurants and do that all the time.
Oh, really?
Not quite as magically though. Yeah, they offer me water, and I say, no, 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 no. Can we turn that into wine?
Yes. Save water, drink wine. Uh, but yeah, I bring that up just so you guys don't tune in on Christmas and listen to the show. But we will be back, believe it or not, on January the 1st on New Year's Day. So just don't think that we're not going to be around on that day. So if you want to tune in and talk with us, we'll be around. And also, as you guys are well aware, I'm sure by now, we do have an after show for the show. So after the show is done, I go into the Discord server, the aforementioned Discord server, and hang out with you guys. And because, it's Christmas time, I figure that this will be one of only a couple times during the year that I will hang out in one of the public rooms instead of the private room that's locked behind the paywall. So I will be in the general voice chat after this show. If you want to hang out with me for an hour, let's do it. All right. So with that all out of the way, let's jump into our main topic, holidays and emotions. I had to find a way to shorten the title a little bit. John originally suggested that the title, our main topic, be the emotional clutter of the holidays. However, if I tried to put 5 words, you'd think it'd be able to show nicely on the screen, but the text actually came up a little bit too small. So I made it holidays plus emotions. John,
Okie dokie.
you're
I
the
can
one.
work with that.
Yeah, you can. It's just a couple of words that were taken out. It's the same basic idea. We can handle this, John. You're the one that suggested this topic. I asked you what we should do for our final topic of the year, and you suggested this. Why did this one particular topic come to mind?
Well,
Aside from the fact that it's
noticed.
Christmas.
Yeah, well, what happens is in my practice, people are thinking about it. So clients have come to me with anxieties around the holiday season. Um, One particular one that's cropped up a couple of times is the anxiety around giving and receiving presents. So if you don't like some present that somebody really worked hard to give you, it can create a whole big pile of anxiety. That's only one example. If you've given somebody a present and you thought it was wonderful, it was the bee's knees, and they get all, sad because of this unappropriate present or inappropriate present, that creates a whole pile of anxiety. But if that wasn't enough, when you're going out selecting gifts for people, that is anxiety producing for many people who are differently wired because they say, oh, what if he doesn't like, what if she doesn't like, what am I going to get? I don't know. I got it that last year, but she got me this little tiny thing. Should I get it? There's a whole pile of questions that come up around just the area of gifting. So getting ready for the holidays can be very stressful for people. Some people avoid a lot of it because it can be so stressful. So that's what made me think of that. The kind of emotions that are associated with they become extreme.
Wow, like sorry, just one thing that you said there took me by surprise. Just the fact that the holidays. Are you saying that the holidays have been so stressful for some people that you've known that they just completely forgo them altogether? Like no presents, no.
Portions of it, yeah. They
Wow.
like some people. Some people like to avoid going, there or avoid here. Like it's just too much. It's too. The emotions are too loud. Like the emotional range is turned up, and I think there's a particular reason for that, which affects people who are differently wired, and that is um, people on the spectrum or with ADHD or whatever have grown up having to fight against what I call the world of should. You should do this. You should be this way. You should be like your sister. You should be like your mom. You should be like your dad. You should be like your big brother. Look at him. You should do this. Oh, you shouldn't sit this way. Or you should look at people when they're talking to you. What's wrong with you? There's a whole pile of should goes on. And in the holiday season, you should be happy. and it should be joyous and a time for togetherness and celebration. Almost every one of the various kinds of holidays, there is a kind of should about it, which often doesn't measure up to the hype surrounding it. So, in some cases, like Anaconda Skin loves being around the family. Some people don't. For some people, it creates a big pile of pressure.
Mm. Yeah, I can imagine just the thought of for certain people that are on the spectrum. This is a little bit of a problem for me. Going out into the big crowds during Christmas and trying to get
Right.
gifts for my family. It's like
Right.
I could manage it, but it's definitely not pleasant. Which is one of the reasons why when I do my Christmas shopping, I try to do it as early as possible. I try to figure out what it is that my parents and my sister want, and then just get that out of the way, so I don't have to worry about it. I can get back to the stuff that I'm doing, right? Plus, it just shows, how much I care about them, just to get that stuff taken care of early, I suppose. Um, but it's funny that I actually bring that up. Um, because my sister at the moment, she has a car and we both pay for the same car. She's in possession of the car, and there's one or two things left that I have to get for certain people in my life, and that's causing me a little bit of stress. But hopefully, now that she's coming home tomorrow, I can alleviate all that by tomorrow. But yeah, back to the differently wired thing. Yeah, that's definitely one of the things. The big crowds. Also, as you were saying about shoulds during the holidays, one thing obviously that's uh, quite a frequent happenstance, I suppose you could say. That makes sense, but sometimes it can be a bit difficult for people that are socially anxious or whatever. Is getting together with family. Now, I imagine, as I do every year, I will be getting together with my family, and it'll sort of be a bittersweet because unfortunately, a family member passed away this past year, and one of the most wonderful people you'd ever meet. And sort of, and she's always sort of been one of the people that the entire family congregates around, sort of, cooking food and being social
Mm.
with everybody. And now she's gone, and that's going to be tough. And I'm just sort of feel like pressure to be more social during the holidays and trying to bring people's spirits up. But obviously, being differently wired, that can be quite difficult. But obviously, there's a whole bunch of other reasons why getting together with family and doing that sort of thing would be difficult. Now, John, you were actually telling me before we started the show about some people that you've been coaching lately that are having troubles with the holidays. Is getting together with family one of them, like the whole social aspect of it?
Yeah, there's sometimes it is a problem. It depends on you know, if somebody in your family thinks you should be doing something more or doing better, it can sort of drag you down.
Hmm.
They say, "Oh, well," they don't see you that often, and when they say, "Oh, you're still at this stage in your life. What's wrong with you? Why don't you get yourself together? Why
Mm.
don't you do this or why don't you do that?" That can be kind of stressful for people. Um, so emotions can be, for some, sort of strung out during the holiday season. It's kind of harder to dial down that stuff under certain circumstances. One of the things, about the gift giving, again, I'll return to that, is that when you give a gift, you're putting yourself out there, and
Mm.
you're actually risking something. So if you give it now, I mean, if you go to your one and only and you say, let's go downtown and shop for stuff, you get what you want, I get what I want, and we can wrap it up. Okay, you get rid of that, but then you lose certain bits of charm, right?
Mm.
So some people don't go for this kind of approach, some do. My dad used to take my mom downtown a couple of days before Christmas, and they'd pick out whatever she wanted, and then they would go home. And there was never, there wasn't stress about that, but there was lots of stress about other things. Um, Sometimes people will go through the holidays and they'll feel it should be something more, and so, like you were talking about earlier, losing someone in the family that was special to the family. Well, that means that more or less every Christmas you will be reminded of that sad note as well as whatever happiness there is about Christmas. You won't forget it this Christmas. You won't forget it next Christmas either. So that will kind of, you know, tinge Christmas. My grandfather died when I was a tiny fellow, Christmas Eve.
Wow.
And so that changed Christmas for our family for a really long time. My mom was very sad. He was a great old man. He was Poppy. And when I knew him, he was already a very old man. And he died in the normal course of a happy, full life. But it was still sad that it was Christmas that he died.
Sure.
It changed the way Christmas felt around the house. And you kind of have to accept that. But it does change the celebration note.
I suppose, you know, with that knowledge in mind, uh, the sort of, like I just said, there is that pressure to try and move past that and try to create a happy holiday for your family. Um, that can be difficult, but there's also, you know, there's a sort of sense of nobility to it where you want to push forward and be the emotional strength for everybody in your family. How do
Mm.
you like when it comes to sort of determining whether or not you should, like, it's okay for you to hold back or move forward? How do you think you might strike that balance? Or you just try to be honest with yourself and uh,
Well,
like,
one of the things I think you could do is go at it in a small way. If for you or for any listener, Christmas is a bit stressful, they can figure out what is the one thing that is very stressful and how can I make a tiny change in that one thing. So, by degrees, you will make it a little less stressful. Let's say, for instance, there's a big hassle around gift giving and choosing the right presents. Well, you can come up with a structure. One of my clients come up with a wonderful structure. He sends out an email to everybody and he asks for a short list from everybody, and then he picks out stuff from the list. So there's a lot less stress. So all the presents that he gives are on somebody's short list somewhere.
oh, okay.
So they, you know what I mean? So they don't know what they're getting for Christmas, but they know the range of things they might get because he's just make sure he gets a list from everybody. And so that reduces that little bit of mm, what angst around this. I noticed Elena de Howler had a nice comment about the malls business. She says she makes stuff. Elena, I got to tell you, one of my favorite presents was from a late and great dear aunt of mine who used to make a loaf of bread and a bottle of jam every Christmas for me. And I always will remember the loaf of bread and the bottle of jam. And people gave me way more expensive stuff, but that made by her own hand every Christmas was delightful. And it's an interesting sidebar to that story. Many years ago, before she had died, I mentioned to a cousin, well, before she had died, they changed and they became part of a religion that didn't give presents.
Hmm.
And they just stopped giving presents. So I mentioned to a cousin, you know, I really miss that loaf of bread and the bottle of jam that I used to get at Christmas time. So a couple of months after that, in the middle of the summer, I got her a loaf of bread and a bottle of jam. She
Nice.
really liked the idea, but she didn't want to do it. That particular religious group didn't want to celebrate presents with presents. They were Christian, but they thought that the commercialization had gone too far, so they made a point of not giving presents during Christmas.
Mm.
But anyway, she gave me that. Back to that point that Elena made, she gave me that personal present, so it has that special, you know, energy that goes into it. So I mean, then it becomes not about money; it becomes about a connection, which is a
Yeah.
very nice connection.
I have to work at stuff like that. Like I know I actually tried to do something similar this past year, but I probably shouldn't say because I think my mother's listening, or my father or my sister. Damn it. Uh, actually, you know what? I think I hear my mother and my father still talking to my cousin who actually just came over before we started the show. So I don't think they're listening. But I'm such an idiot. But yeah, I that sounds like a lovely thing to get. I love jam on anything. Like my mother's been baking a lot this past couple weeks. She made this awesome English cake where it's like cake on top, cream and jam in the middle. Oh, it's so good. So hint hint to anybody who wants to send me homemade jam. I'd be down for that too. Um,
Where will they send it, Max?
Yeah, I guess I probably need a mailing address, and hopefully, it doesn't get here in like with the the jar broken. Even then, I probably just lick it off the broken shards because
I
I
see
had.
somebody sent in a super chat, Gray59.
Yes, thank you. Save me for myself, Grade 59. He says, "Happy friggin' holidays." Well, happy friggin' holidays to you, Grade 59. That's what he said. I'm not. I'm not. But no, we really appreciate it. He sends in a very generous super chat, $20. Thank you so much for that, Grade 59. Hey, listen. Before we move on, I just wanted to ask. There are 49 people watching. If you guys have any thoughts on the holidays, do they stress you out? Do they not stress you out? Do you have any stories you want to share? Please send them in the live chat because John and I would sort of like to address them towards the end of the show so that we can sort of contribute to the discussion a little bit more overall. I figure if we just get through the mailbag questions now, that way we'd have a bit more time than we usually do at the end to tackle these questions. What do you think, John?
Good plan.
All right, cool. So let's move on to the aforementioned mailbag. If I can find the graphics, here we go. Okay, so every week, as I'm sure most of you guys know, but I just got to do these introductions just in case. Every week we have a mailbag segment, and if you want to be on the mailbag segment, yes, you can. If you want to send in a question or tell a story, positive or negative, anything that's related to differently wired topics, we highly encourage you to send it in to this email address that you see on screen, which is maxderrat@yahoo.ca. That's maxderrat, all one word, at yahoo.ca. We got a couple of questions that we're going to deal with today. Well, deal with, that sounds harsh. I mean, like, joyously read. And, sorry. And we'll start with Diego Madero. Diego Madero actually wrote us in the past. I recognize his name. He writes, "Hello, Max. I wrote you a couple months ago when you started your Subscribe Star. Hope you remember that. Yes, I do. The fast recap. I'm a 30-year-old man from Mexico City. I'm on the spectrum. So in a past email, I told you a little bit about myself and how I came to live with a physical disability, chronic pain, and that I'm now semi-married, owning a small business, a small cafe slash pastry store, and making experimental music and visual arts. I'm having an issue that has been bothering me recently, and I was hoping if you can talk about it with Dr. John on the Differently Wired show. It's not exactly Q&A, but anyways, hoping it can be somewhat useful. I've always had a complicated relationship with my mother. I had the feeling that she is somewhat disappointed in me. She thought I was a genius, and here I am, never finishing school, while all my brothers and cousins are studying doctorates in Europe. I remember one time when someone robbed me on public transport when I was a teenager, and she was just mad at me for no clear reason. Even my father was like, "What WTF with this woman? Her son was just beaten, and she just screams at him." So recently, I was having a serious talking with my wife, and she told me that my mother and herself had the impression that I was coming off as kind of weak and negative, mainly because I was always complaining about everything, always criticizing, that I came off like a weak, whiny man. I think that's because I tend to overanalyze everything and I'm more of a pessimistic type, but as far as I remember, I have always been this way. So you can imagine that I was somewhat hurt by that, and it kept me thinking and thinking. Probably my pessimistic way of thinking comes from the idea that you should be prepared for the worst outcome, but you should expect something in between the worst and the best case scenario. It helps a lot to avoid frustration, and I think it helps me a lot, since I mostly can't come as a prepared, calm, wise, trusted, and relaxed person. And that has worked for me. I even had the uncertainty principle tattooed on my arm. The overanalyzing thinking probably comes from my condition, and I tend to think out loud when I'm in a trusted environment, so I guess it can be annoying. So in some ways, I feel that it's probably more of a overreaction from both of them. I'm almost sure that if it was a girl, they wouldn't be as hard with me, but that's another issue more for HBR. HBR being Honey Badger Radio. But on the other side, when my mother and my wife tell me something, it's really difficult to just let it go. I really think they both love me and they really care for me. And it's really affecting me to think about it. I mean, I should be asleep about 3 hours ago, but the thinking about it keeps me awake, and here I am running this on my cell phone. Damn. Yeah, I know that feeling, dude. So how can I know if my negativity and tendency to criticize is causing me a bad reputation in society? That usually won't matter to me, but since I own a business and I make art, the social image, it's really important, I think. And if it is really a bad thing, how can I work on it? At least to give a better impression to them. I mean, it's such a basic aspect of myself. I feel that it's just the way I am. So I feel a little lost, confused, and worried. I try to talk to my father about this, but he just charges the issue. He hates talking about my mother lately. Hope my broken bad English is clear enough. Keep the good job, and thanks again for everything. Well, thanks again for sending in another email, Diego. It's good to hear from you again. Um, there's a couple different dimensions to this. There's, I don't know, maybe you can classify it as cultural slash gender related. The fact that they're chastising you for being quote unquote weak. But there's also the possibility that you yourself seem to have admitted to that your supposed weak mindedness is negatively affecting your ability to live a happy life. Um, do you think I sort of classified that right, John? Like, do you think it's more his issue?
Not quite.
Okay.
There's something that's bothering me underneath it. I'm suspecting, anyway, thank you for that wonderful note, Diego, from Mexico City. I'm suspecting you're a little bit too hard on yourself and maybe tiny bit too accepting of the um, well-meant comments from your wife and mom. Um, Being sensitive is actually not a bad thing. Being thorough in your thinking is not a bad thing. You could tweak the way you are in public, but you don't have to feel badly because you are thoughtful and sensitive and caring
Yeah.
and think in terms of detail. That is pretty good. You were accepting yourself. That's what I'm thinking. That's what I that's what's implied in this note, that you were accepting of yourself, but the well-meaning comments of these well-meaning people have rocked your sense of comfort. Take it back. Be yourself. You don't have to live up to this world of shoulda. This is a man who does this way. And I believe you're right about the comment that perhaps if you're a woman, your sensitivity wouldn't be as noticeable, maybe in that culture. I don't know. But anyway, I think you should feel good about yourself, being thoughtful and thorough. Here you are running a small business, doing experimental music and visual arts. I don't know. It seems to me you're doing really well.
Yeah, on the one hand, yeah, you just made a good point there, John. The fact that he is running a small business while also trying to be artistic on the side, and also, the responsibilities that come along with being married to somebody. It seems like there's a strong possibility that you are being a little bit too hard on yourself. So try to take pride in your achievements and try not to think too much into what other people are saying. Now, I know that's harder. It's easier said than done, especially if you're on the spectrum where all you can do is just hyper focus on certain things and beat yourself up about it. You sort of have to counterbalance that over analysis by taking a little pride in the stuff that you do. Um, that's something I actually got to tell myself because I need to take more pride in the stuff that I do on YouTube. Maybe it's something that we can sort of coach each other on if you want to maintain a further email correspondence. But before we move on to the next email, there is, the fact of the matter that you can overanalyze, and sometimes it can make you come across as weak.
There's one trick that I used to use when I was feeling that way. I would deliberately look for the good in the other person. And I used to make a little game of it on the subway when I worked in Toronto. I would look around the subway and I would look at somebody and I would think something good about them.
Mhm.
And I taught myself the habit of thinking of a good thing in that other person. And it kind of puts you on a different footing. So, for instance, that might be helpful in your business. If somebody comes in your business and you're feeling a negative thought, you can look at them and see something good about them. Well, the fact that they're in your shop going to buy something, that's good. But look for something good about them. And that will you can kind of game your negative feelings a little bit in your work that way. Because I don't have any evidence in that letter that the so-called negativity is hurting your business at all. We're only getting this negativity message from two women. We're not
Mm.
actually getting it from your business. But if you think it might be, then the idea of looking for the good might be useful for you, Diego.
Yeah, yeah. Obviously, what John just said there is, it might seem like common sense to you, but it is actually important. It is worth repeating. Making sure that you develop a good rapport with your customers and making sure you can find something good about them. Just make sure if you choose to vocalize what you think is positive about your customer, just make sure if it's a woman that you can reasonably consider to be attractive, that your wife isn't around when you're doing it. Just I'm not talking from experience or anything. Let's move on to the next email. Hopefully we addressed your question sufficiently, Diego. Next email comes to us from another guy that, what is up with my graphics today? Okay. Next email comes to us from Jonathan Morris. And Jonathan has written us in the past. Just before I start reading his email, I just want to acknowledge that in the email that he sent, he wanted to remind us of who he was. He was the guy that suggested Greta Thunberg as a good representative for people of the autism community, I suppose.
Right.
And when we sort of got into our discussion about whether or not she was doing more good than harm, he told us that he felt a little bit bad about suggesting her and thinking that maybe we were chastising him for suggesting her. And no, dude, I just want to be clear. Look, no problem whatsoever. Honestly, like, there's positive and negative elements to everything. And what you said about Greta and her being a positive face, there is positive elements to what she's doing. Bringing attention to climate change, being young, being somebody that is differently wired, that's accomplishing so much. There is a positive angle to that, and that is what you focused on, and that's entirely correct. So don't beat yourself up about it, because it seemed like that's what you were doing in your email. We'd love to hear from you, regardless of whether or not we hold different opinions. It's all contributing to good discussion here on the show. So let's read your email, dude. As a child, I had a great interest in meteorology and archaeology. Later, I became fascinated with astronomy and science. During my middle school years, my interest shifted to linguistics and mathematics. 3 years ago, I took a great interest in art and animation. Music has also been a big part of my whole life. These periods of interest usually last 2 to 3 years, after which I no longer feel the sense of wonder I felt when I first found them. 3 years ago, I started studying physics at university. I initially settled in quite well, although I later suffered from a short spell of depression and anxiety. Wait a minute, why do I... Okay. I quickly and painfully got out of this after taking cognitive behavioral therapy. I can't talk today. Looking after myself better, reading about critical thinking in the university library, and reaching out for help from my lecturers. The second year was more successful, though I still found it difficult to keep up with the amount of work on top of my living expenses and other interests. I decided to drop out and continue my degree through the Open University, which is where students study for a degree at home part-time. I feel that I have mentally declined over the last year, primarily due to isolation, and I have experienced a lot of what Mihei, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that name, in his book.
Csikszentmihalyi.
God bless you, John. In his wow, in his book Flow, called Psychic Entropy. I am now in a state of dazed confusion after reading about the life of Alexander Solzhenitsyn, actually not how to pronounce that, followed by Yuval Noah Harari's books Homo Deus and 21 Lessons for the 21st Century. I've come to realize that science and humanism, my two biggest values previously, may not be all that I thought they were. That said, I'm still determined to finish the degree. I can't help but feel that I am too curious and open for my own good. To succeed greatly at something, I must devote most, if not all, my time and energy to it. However, I often refrain from doing this out of fear that it isn't the optimal path, or that it could make me narrow-minded. This leads to me not progressing far, so I get angry at myself for not being more disciplined and mentally tougher, which in the past has nearly escalated into self-harm. My question is, if one has multiple special interests, how does one determine the one on which to focus? Thank you, Jonathan. Okay. Thank you very much for sending that in, Jonathan. John, I'm going to give my response to this, and it's going to be sort of the way that I approach this problem, because I've had the same problem somewhat that Jonathan has had. And then you could sort of disagree or agree or offer thoughts on what I say. So, in my life, I've sort of had this same sort of experience as you, Jonathan. I've come across things that I have an intense interest in, and then that becomes my primary interest for a couple years until sort of the magic dissipates. For a long time, my special interest was music. I got really good at playing the piano and the guitar. Um, I'll just cite that example just for time's sake. But then, as over the last few years of my life, I've found that, days go by a whole lot faster and more responsibilities I have to take on. I can't really devote myself to every particular interest that I have. I used to watch a lot more movies. I used to watch a lot more TV. Don't have much time for that. But I sort of made peace with the fact that I don't have time for all the things that I have love for, because as long as I am pursuing something that I do have interest in and I'm doing good work with it, then the fact that I'm not necessarily getting around to those things right away, it doesn't really bother me as much. So what I would sort of recommend to you, based on what I've done in my life, and like I said, John, feel free to disagree with this, is just figure out what it is of all the things that you are good at and the things that you do have passion for. Sort of take a utilitarian approach to it. Try to figure out what it is that you enjoy the most and that you are best at, and try to find a happy medium between the two, and then pursue that enthusiastically. It'll fall in line with the fact that, being on the spectrum, you tend to hyper focus on certain things, be really good at certain things, and then pursue that enthusiastically. And also, another factor that I should probably introduce into that is try to figure out which of the things that you are good at and that you have pursued have garnered you the most success. For me personally, I found that it's more utilitarian and, benefiting to me to dedicate my time and effort towards writing, because a lot of people seem to really enjoy that. The YouTube videos that I do, as well as the mental health advocacy that John and I do, and as long as you can fit that in along with all your other responsibilities, that would be the approach that I take. Now, obviously, it'll be hard at first because you'll have to let go of some of these things, but once you do, you'll find that you can do it, and you'll get over it over a while. John, what do you think?
Well, I think this guy, Jonathan, is a very sophisticated person in his thinking and his writing, and he writes eloquently about
Hmm.
the dilemma he's facing. I agree with your approach, Max. I think utilitarian is a good model to use. And I'll tell you from a slightly different angle. What caught my attention is the sentence, however, I often refrain from doing this out of fear that it isn't the optimal path.
Yeah, yeah.
That is a blind alley and a barrier to happiness. I refrain out of fear that it isn't the optimal path. Now, you can forget that. You can forget worrying about not doing the optimal path. This brings me back to my comment earlier about the world of should. That optimal path is somebody else's idea. It doesn't have to be your idea. There's lots of stuff you enjoy, lots of stuff you do well. You can follow Max's lead and say, pick out the things that right now are interesting you. But I say, go ahead, throw yourself wholeheartedly into whatever it is that interests you at the moment. And don't worry if it's not the optimal thing. Allow yourself the joy and the freedom, and the sophistication that you bring will make this really worthwhile. You are reading stuff that lots of people can't read. I wouldn't be afraid to go ahead and be narrow-minded sometimes. Picasso was narrow-minded. Um, he only painted, right? That's all he would do is paint. Well, he did other things too, but mostly just paint. But like really successful people who, and they're often different you are, really devote themselves wholeheartedly to something.
Mhm.
I think that's where leadership in the world has come from, in the arts, in the sciences. I mean, would you say to Yitzhak Perlman, hey, you're playing the fiddle too much, get out and do some computers and dig ditches and make cakes? No, 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 no. Really, go ahead. Indulge your interests and don't be afraid to try stuff. And if you change your mind, try the other stuff. And
Mhm.
if you change your mind again, try it again. And then using Max's model of utilitarian, the ones that are more useful, if you have a choice between, well, this is useless and that's useful, okay, take useful. And then sometimes take useless because it's more interesting. So you don't have to use fear to make those decisions about your life choices. Fear is a rotten guide.
Yeah, yeah. Generally speaking, I agree with John, especially given the fact that you do have so many interests. and are very talented, as John remarked on. There is some room for experimentation here, so try to figure out, like, take some time for yourself and try to figure out what would work best for you instead of just letting fear entirely guide what you're doing. Now, obviously,
There's actually, before we leave that, there's
yeah.
one other thing I'd like to allude to. There's a chiropractor in Toronto, Dr. Elaine Demby, who's a great full-fledged living person. And she wrote a few books about how to live your life. And the title of one of the books is Use the Good Dishes.
Mm.
Don't be saving up stuff. Don't be holding back. You, like, some people have the good dishes. When I grew up in this little place, Newfoundland, people would get a sofa furniture and they would cover it with plastic, and they would have plastic on the carpet, and you couldn't see the actual furniture because it would be protecting stuff. Too much protecting. She says, use the good dishes. Go ahead. Don't save stuff. Throw yourself into stuff. Live it. Enjoy it. They break. Okay, get more dishes or forget it.
Yeah, they're just dishes after all. In the
Yep.
in the grand scheme of things, yeah. As somebody who doesn't really care too much for material prosperity, I definitely agree with everything that woman just said. Yeah, so hopefully we addressed your question. Okay, Jonathan, like Diego, if you feel the need to follow up on this conversation, we'd love to hear from you again and continue this. Um, After all, that is what we do here. Okay, so we just have a few minutes left before John has to dip out. I want to address some of the things that people might have been saying in the live chat. But actually, before we do, 59 people are watching right now, and on my screen, there seems to be only 30 likes. I mean, come on. It's the season of giving. Just give us that like.
Can you like twice?
Yeah. Yeah, like twice. Make a second account and like it again. Come on. We deserve it. We're what is it, L'Oreal? We're worth it. Although probably not as good looking as anyways. Let's see. Emerald Queen says, I also do homemade gifts, and when I was a kid, my family always went to my grandma's, but she triggered me. So we now just hang out at home now. Oh, that's too bad. I I don't
But it
really.
is a way of protecting, emotional extremes,
Yeah, it is the holidays. You sort of want to maintain, a happy environment, a familial environment. Yeah. Um, let's see. Lucas de Arrojo Marquez. Sorry if I butchered your name, dude. Seriously though, it's just so ridiculous that some people over here see us normal guys being all aggressive and brawling over girls or anything really. What was that in response to Diego's question? Or
That was in response to our earlier commenting about stereotyping and having boys be a certain way and girls be a certain way. And I think it was with response really to that first question. Yeah.
yeah, there is some
Yeah.
some gender specific stuff there. Whenever you're approaching people, regardless of what sex they are, just try to treat them as individuals and not as sort of representations of a stereotype. I think you'll have more mileage by doing that. Necrotoxin, that's Elisa. She does the art for my channel. She says hi. I say hi. Hello. Lighthouse says I made 55 accounts. All those likes are mine. I want proof. I want receipts. Just like I want for all my
That's right.
holiday gifts this year. No, I'm kidding. Let's see. What else do we have here?
Did he subscribe to your star thing 55 times?
Yeah. Did you? Yeah. Because I don't see any evidence of that. Come on, make do. It's the season of perpetual hope. Make me hopeful here. All right. Um, let's see. Adil, maybe holidays interfere with our routines to some degree, and that's why they feel Thank you. Thank you, Adil. Yes, absolutely, 100% agree. They definitely do interfere with our routines because there are some people like myself that whenever any little thing is messed with in our routine, it's like it throws our entire day off. It's like I don't know, like the one Jenga brick that's out of place and it just sends the whole thing tumbling down. When you're having to think about all these things as a way of trying to demonstrate your love for your family and your friends within this confine, it can feel somewhat suffocating. So I definitely feel that. What do you think, John?
Yeah, I think you feel it.
Yeah. Christmas is good.
I I
Yep.
noticed that one of the people writing in was crying.
Oh, who was it?
Mido Saito Akaji.
Oh, Mito Saito Akaji. Uh,
Yeah, how
uh,
you doing now, Mito Saito?
yeah. Let's just hear from you if you're still here. Like, is everything okay? Mito Saito Akaji says, I only want to ignore the holidays for just focusing with my passion and work because Christmas is again a bad business tactic to steal everyone's money. There's some truth to that.
Well, a lot of people would agree with that. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, like
there's
you said, it was your grandparents, John, that would just go to the store and get each other gifts they want.
no, my parents.
Oh, your parents. Sorry, yeah, your parents.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, do people do stuff differently? Like, not everybody is celebrates Christmas. People do things differently.
There's
Elements.
a nice comment from Annabelle. Thanks for giving us hope, Max and John.
Oh
That's
well,
very nice.
well, thank. That's very nice of you, Annabelle, and we're so glad to, do work like this that it can be meaningful for other people, and can be helpful. Darth Escar. I mainly dislike the various obligations related to holidays. They're unpleasant to deal with. This even applies to my birthday. Yeah, like my parents always badger me. Oh, you want to go out for dinner? Where do you want to go out for dinner? It's like if you want to make me like a steak or something, that's good. We don't have to go out. Um, I definitely feel that, and I'm totally honest about it too. Oh, Nick Nicholson, he's one of our Subscribe Star supporters. He says, my sister and I buy each other presents like that. Yeah, my sister and I are kind of the same way. She knows to get me Cineplex gift cards, and I know to get her grocery gift cards. And it's all good.
Ah, all good.
It's all good. Finally, before we tune out, I just want to point out Elemental of Air. Have you done any videos / will you ever do a video on selective mutism? That'd be a good topic. It's not something like I remember when I did my Truth About Asperger's Syndrome video. The first one, I said I would talk about selective mutism, but then I realized it wasn't something exactly that applied to me. It sort of used to, but not right now. But because, this show isn't just about me and John, it's about everybody. I suppose we absolutely could talk about selective mutism. Do you want to tell them what selective mutism is, John, just in case they don't know, or should I?
I don't know.
You don't know what selective mutism is?
No.
Oh, selective mutism is a form of anxiety that certain people have where they will only talk to people that they're familiar with and comfortable with. And you see this a lot in children. Like whenever they're around their parents, they'll be talkative and you'd think they might, grow up to be a politician someday. But like when they go to school and their teacher calls on them or asks them a question, they'll just freeze up. They won't talk.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's what selective mutism is.
I
And
didn't know that's what it was called. I've certainly seen it. It's a protection,
yeah.
and it's a very interesting thing. Yeah, it might be worth having a show about that for sure.
Yeah, maybe that'll be one of the things that we can do in the new year. Okay,
Yeah.
John, you got to dip out in a second.
I got to head out. Yeah.
Okay, I'll finish up the show, guys. Just
Season's greetings, everyone. See
yeah,
you later.
season's greetings, everybody. Yeah, and see you later, John. We'll talk in the new year. Have a happy or Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Oh, I'm not sure you heard that. But anyway, see, I'll make sure to I'll make sure to message him afterwards. But before we go, I just want to remind you guys, as I said at the beginning of the show, there will be an after show, and because it is Christmas, it won't be behind the paywall. I will be in the public chat in the Discord server after the show is done. So if you want to hang out for an hour, I will be there. So we could just hang out. Finally, before we go, just want to remind you guys that are still listening to this live, make sure you hit that like button. Seriously, when you do it, it just tells the YouTube algorithm that this content is good and it puts it in people's recommended feeds and people will watch it and yada, yada, yada. Closer to world domination and all that stuff that I'm sure you're familiar with. Yeah, and I think that's about it. Before we conclude, I want to wish you guys all a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, a Kwezi Kwanzaa, a tip-top tet, a solemn and humble Ramadan. Praise Xenu. Praise Jewish. I don't know. You guys get the point. Happy holidays. Thank you all so much for this wonderful past year, and we look forward to expanding and doing a lot more great stuff in the new year for people in the Differently Wired community. Until that time, however, I just wanted to remind you guys, stay Yellow.